Okay, family, welcome to our final session for the Pacific Child Wellbeing Conference, our second plenary session. So the format for the session, we will have back-to-back speakers, and after our speakers have finished their presentations, we will then bring them up on stage for a Q&A, as with our panel earlier this morning and our plenary session that we had yesterday. And of course, we'll be taking questions up on the screen. But before that, we have an opening video again from our awesome Pacific Kids Learning. Direct your attention to the screen.
Hey Missy, the next plenary session is about commissioning for Pacific Child Wellbeing.
Huh? What is that?
That's when lots of people come together to make sure that all kids are safe and loved. Just like I saw on TV. Some kids, they can't stay with their mums and dads, so they gotta stay with other people until their mums and dads can take care of them again. That's really sad, eh?
Wow, that sounds important. Who's going to speak?
A whole bunch of important people, I think. People who help make decisions for us. They'll talk about how to make things better.
Oh, that sounds cool. Will they be wearing their white Sunday clothes?
Of course not, Missy. This is not White Sunday.
Oh, it sounds like they'll have a lot of words they need to remember. I hope they talk about how we can help too.
I'm excited to learn more about how we can make a difference for our kids.
Me too. I really hope they've got some good ideas.
I'm sure they will. And hey, we can come up with some of our own ideas.
Yeah, let's brainstorm. I've got some great ideas.
Shh! It's about to start. Let's see what these adults have to say.
Our first presenter for this afternoon's plenary session, again on commissioning for Pacific Child Wellbeing, Chief Advisor Pacific with the Office of the Chief Executive for Oranga Tamariki. Please welcome Ayoluputea Sina Ai Ono Malasui Fola Wafionga. Ayoluputea, big round of applause, family.
I know this is the best time to do the presentation is after lunch, when half of you will be half asleep and half of you will be wanting to go fall asleep. But a friend of mine, Tavita, said, make sure I call you out if I see you falling asleep. So thank you, Tavita, for the advice. But let's start. E ngā mana, e ngā reo take, e nā whanaunga katoa o te moana nui a kiwa. Ni sampule vinaka, namaste, halo oloketa, mahalo e lelei, kia rana, malo ni, whakalowhalahi atu, tēnā hoki koutou katoa. Whaatalofa atu ma le whaaloalo, lava le paia ma le malu a whaatasi mai le nei, aso mātango fie, mahalo le soifua maua ma le langi mama. Tēnā anō hoki ki a tātou tini mate me te ki, noho mai koutou ki te pito o te mate whanga mai. Ka hoki mai ki a tātou o te pito o te ora, tēnā koutou, tēnā hoki tātou katoa, e hui nei ki tā tātou kaupapa whakahirahira. Ko ngā kaupapa katoa o te hui nei e hangai ana. Ki ngā pepi, ngā tamariki me ngā rangatahi, e tika ki a pēnā ai, ko rātou hoki ngā kaiārahi, ngā rangatira o ngā rā kei mua. Engari, E ai ki a tāwira kārana, e taki ki a waihohia e tātou. He Aotearoa whakaro kotahi mō wā tātou tamariki katoa. Mōku ake ko te tino wero, kei mua i a tātou katoa i te rangi nei. Kia waihohia e tātou katoa he Aotearoa whakaro kotahi, e hara ane ake mō nā reanga tamariki o Inaia nei, engari mō ngā reanga tamariki katoa, kaore anō ki a whānau mai. I have a translation of what I just said up there, so hopefully for some of you, our Māori tangata whenua who might be here with us today may have picked up some of the reo, but I was hoping to share some of those special words that a good friend of mine, Papa Doug Hauraki, who is our tumutikanga at Oranga Tamariki and from Ngāti Porou, shared with me to share with you all this morning, or this afternoon. So, tālofa lava and greetings from Oranga Tamariki Chief Executive Office. May I acknowledge Moana Connect, Lua Whionga Whalatongia, Malaitongia, Jacinta, ma Dr. Teowila, for the invitation. I think someone yesterday said, ole voluntold, ia koe whai fwoi ma le voluntold fwoi ma au. So whenever Dr. Teowila or Malaitongia asks you to do something, you just do it. So that's how we roll, the woman. I'd just like to acknowledge our speakers, my fellow plenary speakers, Aaron and Holika from the Independent Children's Monitor, and Te Whatu Ora as well. But mostly just wanted to acknowledge our presenters in the breakout sessions over the last 2 days in particular. I had the pleasure to just join in and just sit and observe and listen to many of the sessions, most fascinating sessions. And I did notice the majority were women that were presenting and women in the room. So let's challenge our men, our tāne, to join in with our kōrero and our movement here around our Pacific children well-being. But certainly they are fascinating and just amazing presentations and the kōrero that's been happening over the last 2 days of the conference. Look, today I just wanted to share a little bit about what Oranga Tamariki is doing in the context of our part to play, and we have a significant part to play, particularly in the vulnerable children tamariki and rangatahi of Aotearoa, and in particular our Pacific children. So I just wanted to share some of the work that we are embarking on, and perhaps later we might have some more questions or even offline perhaps after about some of more of the details. So I'm just going to give a slight kind of overview of our work at Oranga Tamariki. Congratulations on the report, Malaitongia and Dr. Teowila and the team at Moana Connect, the Child Wellbeing Report which was received. I did have, was able to read a little bit about the report and kind of pick up some of the highlights, if I might just begin with, around expanding and improving some of the existing work that's happening in the public sector, if I speak for Oranga Tamariki, and the necessity to scale up and be more ambitious. And I suppose if I'm speaking from Oranga Tamariki in the year and a half that I've been here, certainly it has been very, very challenging, and I know we're in the media a lot. I don't think we're in the media as much now, which is a good thing in that respect. And I know certainly Minister Davis has had a big part to play that, as well as our new Chief Executive Officer that was permanently appointed in December, Chapi Tekani. I did pick out a few things in the report, which I think some of what I might cover today, or some of the work that's underneath the work, will cover in terms of the need for us to empower Pacific providers and support the Pacific models of care, certainly through the Oranga Tamariki and state care services, the need to ensure our services and practices that are healing and not judgmental and aligned with cultural values and backgrounds, some of the work that we have highlighted moving forward. around the Voices of Family advocacy group. That's a great recommendation. We have a number of voices group is what we call them in Wellington for tamariki and rangatahi for caregivers. But no, I don't think we have one that has the family call. So I really like that recommendation too. In terms of supporting the growth of our workforce, certainly the workforce is one of our key focus areas. Both our social work, in particular our social work workforce, and talofa to our social workers are in the room today. Hopefully you've been at Oranga Tamariki or might return to Oranga Tamariki, or we might work for you. And certainly the qualified Pacific community workforce is definitely an area for Oranga Tamariki. If I think about our Pacific kaimahi, see my te reo has picked up since I started working at Oranga Tamariki. I know you're all sitting there going, that's not the Sina that we knew from Otara. Yeah, okay. Just joking. Certainly we have a lot of our Pacific staff working at Oranga Tamariki and the youth justice and the residential areas will be part of that community workforce that we're looking to build and ensure that they get the professional development that they need. Youth workers in particular too as well in terms of the support to help them grow in their work and certainly, you know, try and secure some of the wages and remuneration that we, you know, we so deserve as part of our efforts to close the equity pay gaps, all the rest of it. So who are we, Oranga Tamariki? I hate to assume that everybody knows who we are, what we aren't. All I knew growing up in Otara was SIFs, the old Oranga Tamariki, were the people that used to come and take our kids away. That's all we knew, that's all the layperson knew. Not having been a social worker or not having been a family that had been impacted by a SIF's engagement. Now I'm a lot more wiser, I guess, and so I want to share with you today what we do. We're probably, you will be well aware of the number of reviews over in this space with SIFs and the previous Ministry of Social Development, Department of Social Welfare, where Oranga Tamariki today has come from. We had Poao Te Atatu in 1986, which was the hardest hitting report, and since then has been kind of the benchmark by which we kind of looked to see, well, what were some of the recommendations in the 80s that were made around, a lot of it was around racism, institutional, systemic racism, inequitable practices, etc. The Waitangi Tribunal, and more recently, Minister Davis had appointed a ministerial advisory board, maybe 2021, and they released a report called, the short version, excuse me if I'm not using the whole name, Te Kahu Aroha, which really informed where Oranga Tamariki is now and where we are looking to go into the future. On that Ministerial Advisory Board, amongst other fantastic rangatira, Tā Mark Solomon, Shannon Pakura, some of the social workers here might know of her, Ruth, forget her surname, and of course our own Councillor Alf Filipainga is on the Ministerial Advisory Board as a Pacific representative. So the vision for Oranga Tamariki is that all our children and whānau are safe, loved and nurtured and supported by thriving communities. I like that last part as well, where we're talking about the child in the context of our communities. They don't sit alone, and we know that as Pacific people, a child belongs to a family belongs to a village, a community, and so on and so forth. Our purpose is to make sure that our tamariki are in loving whānau and communities. We are, that's not orange, it should be oranga. Sorry, that's my Māori gone wrong. Can be realised. And we're able to really highlight that we have two key roles. So quite often people, I don't know, some people have different perceptions or understandings of what we do. And so as organisations, we've said we have two key roles to fulfil. One, and that's one that excites me, is to be an enabler and coordinator for Māori and communities. And forgive me, we don't have Pacific communities in there, but if you understand the tamariki that we serve in terms of the numbers that are in care, etc., then you'll understand why we have Māori, both because of our treaty obligation, but also where Pacific fits. to empower them to put in place the support, the solutions and the services they know will work for their people, for us. The second key role is to be a high-performing, highly trusted statutory care and protection and youth justice agency. And we also, of course, facilitate the adoption process for birth and adoptive parents, which I won't talk about too much today. So our focus is on our most vulnerable children and young people in Aotearoa with greatest need. We work with around 50,000 distinct children per annum, and we have 4,000, and this is this, sobering number, 4,600 children and young people that are currently in the care of the Chief Executive. If we break it down a bit further, of these numbers, our tamariki, put a Samoan word in there, tamaiti, was it us in Tonga, our rangatahi, our youth, 58% of those in care are of Māori descent, 16% are Pasifika, and we can break that down into ethnic specific, including 10 of the 16% that are both Māori and Pasifika heritage. We also have a disproportionately number of whaikaha, that's disabilities, that's my new word too, takatapui and children and young people. So that is an area that is not as easily identifiable for us at the moment, just with our systems that we have in place of the actual number of children with disabilities in care, because some of them will be diagnosed and some of our children won't, aren't diagnosed, etc. So that is a piece of work that my fellow colleague, the Chief Advisor Disability, is currently working on with the Ministry of Whaikaha. And they've been engaging quite widely, including with our Pacific communities in the disability space, to ensure that that's informing that as well. Oh, you probably can't read this. This is one of Hulika, my colleague Hulika, who was with us before, started a Pacific profile, just to give high-level numbers to share. And I'll just point out, you probably might not be able to read that 797, we have 797, that was at the end of 30th June, Pacific children are in care. They comprise 17% of the total number of kids in tamariki in care. 65% of our children are Pacific Māori, and 60%, so 2/3 of our Pacific children live with whānau, live with their family or extended family. We receive just over 8,000 reports of concern pertaining to Pacific children every year. That makes up about 13% of our total ROCs. I know Minister Davis had talked a little bit about that yesterday. And we have, just in terms of Pacific staff, about 663 Pacific staff across the motu, that comprise 17% of our total number of staff. So not too bad, quite a big Pacific workforce. And of course, most of them, 90%, are in the service delivery line. So they're working in our sites, they're working in our regional offices, and much fewer at the national office. So that just gives you a little bit of a context of our Pacific children that are in care. We've got breakdowns of ethnicities, but I won't share that with you, and just the spread across the country from Northland. Most of our children in care in the Tāmaki, Makaurau, Auckland area, Ōtautahi, Christchurch, East Coast and Wellington areas is where most of our reports of concern for Pacific children come from. And of course we know we've got growing populations outside of Auckland, particularly down in Waikato and going right down. So we are seeing reports of concern come through from where our people are starting to live. So I talked about fundamental changes, and as we think about the topic for this plenary session around commissioning for Pacific children wellbeing, we are undergoing or have been undertaking an ambitious program of change. And for some of you who have worked with us or haven't, this is ambitious for us. It's got so many prongs around what we need to achieve. But I can certainly say, and I don't say this lightly, that I have full confidence in our current organisation and leadership to get some stakes in the ground and get it going, and certainly want to be part of that. The first one is around the empowering partnerships with Māori communities, to have greater cohesion with government agencies, the practice shifts to make sure that our practices culturally appropriate, and I know we had a session with Dr. Jean and Dr. Tracy around cultural humility, so we're thinking about how do we make sure the organisation is culturally capable, and you've got practitioners that are culturally, what is the word, we're going capable, competent, practice is appropriate. So all of those things to ensure that our children and our families are served well. We're committed to driving those changes to address the systemic failings that we've heard about over the decades. So what is our plan, our roadmap? What is our plan that we have been working on since the launch of the Future Direction Plan is what we're calling it. It's an organisation roadmap for the next 2 to 5 years. Well, we're currently on it now, so we're about a year and a bit into it. We have short-term and long-term transformative goals underneath the Future Direction Plan. There's 5 prongs. The first one is the organisational blueprint, so that's about looking at the leadership structure, the organisational structure, the operating model. We're very blessed to have our DCE, some of you might be from Te Arapautama Corrections, Rachel Leota, who is Fijian, Palangi, and married to a Samoan, yay, and from Porirua, yay, who's our Wellingtonians? Yay! I'm from Wellington now too, Otarana. So we're really blessed to have you. If you've worked with her, she's responsible for all of our service delivery lines. So all our people out on the sites, Rachel is serving in that area. So we're really pleased. And is leading the work alongside the leadership team around the operating model. What does the operating model look like? Well, we keep talking about it. I think governments have talked about it for a number of years. A locally led, regionally supported, what's the other word? Nationally enabled model here. But what that means, and I think it's timely in terms of this conversation we're having around enabling communities, because as we shift our operating model, it puts our communities first. So that might mean, I'm probably talking, I'll just go in and out of my presentation. So what that means is the need will be defined from what's happening in the regions, in the say for example here in Tamaki Makaurau or wherever it might be, and the communities and their needs will define what that might look like. That's huge changes. There might be people from the union, so I'm not going to say too much, but that will mean huge changes for us in the local areas, in our local sites, what that means. I've heard a number of the workshops talking about workforce too. So prioritising our people and culture, building our workforce. We have a workforce strategy, a 3 to 5 year one that's already underway too. So that's to consider what do we need in the front line, social workers, youth workers. We have, the Māori have kairaranga or kairaranga, yep. Pacific, for us, we have cultural advisors, and there's probably up to a dozen. And so that's a piece of work that we need that we're leaning into to, I guess, establish more, I have to choose my word carefully, establish more full-time roles, permanent roles, to recognise recognise the need from our families, where we need specialist advisors to go into homes, be able to engage appropriately and get the best outcomes for that child or that family, and relay that back to the resources that need to follow for sites and for management. Supervision is another one, cultural supervision. So many of you who might be cultural supervisors, thank you if you're already doing that for some of our staff. And we need a lot more for our staff to be able to access to make sure that their practice and their cultural practices are, they've got somebody to talk to make sure they're reflecting on and ensure that it's appropriate. In terms of partnerships and decision making, so currently, I think this is all available publicly. So it's about 400 or 500 million that we procure in terms of services for our children. And currently there's a very small percentage of that is we are spending on our Pacific providers, just for various reasons. So part of this work in the Future Direction Plan is to engage with communities, engage with our Pacific providers, look to see who will be able to offer those services that we need. It might be in the areas of dealing with reports of concern that come in to be assessed or referred, or it might be early intervention support, it might be some prevention support. I know many of you are already working in those spaces, contracted to MSD, perhaps MOE and others, and so there's certainly a space that we're looking at. Some of the examples of that work that's happening in that particular enabling community space that our Māori have already started are our iwi, our arrangements with, for example, Ngāi Tahu and Tainui on the east coast too, and up north in Northland. So some of that, some of the conversations they'll have might be around our community saying, we'll look after all the reports of concern, or we will look after the bed, an overnight stay for perhaps a tamariki that needs a place to stay, or it could be in the youth justice space. So at the moment, the conversations with our iwi are quite open. It's not us telling them what to do, or we want to procure this particular service from you. They're very open at the moment. That's been the model, the design, for the community to say, we want to look after all our kids, we will look after the triaging, but we won't do this. O rangatamariki, we need you to do this. So that's been the nature of the conversations of the 7 prototype iwi models that we have in play at the moment. And so when we embark on the Pacific one, which should be in the next financial year, which is a couple of months away, we want to have the same conversations with our communities too. They won't be like the iwi arrangements, but we need Pacific communities to say, this is what we'll do, this is what this is the geographic areas that we want to look after, perhaps reports of concern or early intervention or prevention, or might be transition support out, I'm not sure. So those conversations are quite wide-ranging. I think this is the real opportunity, and you'll see that we are working on where the shifts in the funding will change. The decisions will be made by our communities, and that will happen in line with the operating model that's happening for our own staff and sites. So it's an exciting, challenging space to be in. There's a whole lot of, I think it's a good thing. It can present, some angst, I guess, for us in terms of staff or communities, but I think this is where it needs to be. We're thinking about Pacific children. We know, you know, I know, when I'm sitting here, I'm humbled. You all know where our Pacific children, where the spaces and challenges and opportunities, and where we need more resource and where we need to put our focus on. And I think the report that Moana Connect has presented has, certainly highlighted those spaces. We talk about enhancing the mana frontline kaumahi, lifting our social work practice, so the organisation's investing in that, particularly with new social workers, and some of the care and protection aspects that social workers might not get when they, or might not get as much when they're training to be social workers. I see from the report too, it identified the poor retention rates of our social workers coming through the tertiary institutions, but so that's certainly an area that tertiary institutions, and also o rangatamariki and those who are recruiting and developing our children's workforce might also look to cover. And I certainly with our o rangatamariki is regularly engaging, like it should, with our social workers registration board around practice, around workforce, around ensuring that they're competent to do the work they need to do and supported. And of course the data insights and evidence support to support activities, that everything's informed by the data. We have a very clunky system, and some of you who might have worked for Rangatamariki or SIFS 20 years ago, we're still using Cyrus, sorry, but they have made some progress with some of the information that we're able to collate at a site level and a regional level. So there is some stuff happening, but certainly we've got some initiatives to replace replace the current system so that it actually works and informs how we work and how we resource staff and the organisations in our communities. Just this bit here, I know we keep using o rangatamariki, and me not being a social worker and being a layperson, I keep getting confused. So I just wanted to point out, and I think if you'd read or if you're interested or you have read, for example, our Chief Social Worker, Peter Whitcomb's review of the Malakai, the tragic Malakai event, or Dame Karen Potassi's sister review, also reflecting on that. It highlights, and I think Minister Davis might have mentioned it yesterday, that oranga tamariki, or our children, it's a system made. There are a number of organisations, public organisations, that are responsible for different parts. And so when something happens, it's not always oranga tamariki, but we're thinking of oranga tamariki as system, as a number of agencies and a system that we are all committed to. So in terms of the oranga tamariki system, it comprises 6 agencies. Hello to my colleagues from these agencies, which includes Oranga Tamariki, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, Social Development, Justice and Police. There's there's heaps of us. It's the mechanism though, so this came in during Minister Davis's time, that holds children's agencies to account to ensure that we're prioritising and catering for the children that are in our care or at risk of coming into our care. And I think that number's is in the hundreds of thousands that they think are at risk of possibly coming into care. But so this is why this sort of plan is important. It's the importance of families, whānau, hapu iwi and communities to determine the way that our children and young people thrive, so communities are enabled to make decisions themselves. At the moment, that particular group have been working on health, housing, education. They could have just read the report, and I'm a public servant, we could have just read the report, it's all here. But it's good, I mean, we've said the same, I like what the report says, scale up and be ambitious, and just, you got to ask for the sky and the stars. And if you pray hard, you'll get the sky and the stars. If not, you won't. Okay, don't have to laugh. Wake up, those of you who've gone to sleep. Just lastly, we have a Pacific strategy that sits underneath. We have an organisational strategy, we have a Pacific strategy, disability strategy, and a Māori strategy. And so the Pacific strategy, thank you Hulika who crafted the first one, we really just did a refresh. Sits underneath this organisational transformational project, and just highlight some of the bits which we think as Pacific need to be surfaced more obviously to the organisation. So of course you have to say enabling Pacific communities, please, which is increasing our Pacific provider capability, etc. It's about workforce capability. Thank you to those who are familiar with our Va'aifetu social work practice model, and that there are a number of people in here who were part of the developing of that in the mid-2000s. Thank you. It's still there. They're still working on it. We need to get our workforce capable of delivering, be able to practice the Va'aifetu practice models. I talked about some of these other things. We have some leadership initiatives to increase the number of Pacific and senior leadership roles. We have a number of site managers across the country, not as many as we'd like, and most of them are in Auckland. 2 regional managers, one in Bay of Plenty, and one here, Lisa Sepulongi from Auckland. And certainly looking to grow more in the 3rd and 4th tiers. If you know big organisations like ours, you've got so many tiers, so we certainly want them in the first 4 to 5 tiers of the organisation, so they're in decision-making roles and able to influence where they are. I think that sort of covers that. And like I said before, the disability strategy, it's one of the key priorities for us, and our responsibilities to ensure we're complying, or not complying, that we're actually meeting the needs of our children with disabilities and the United Nations Convention to ensure that is up and going and that gets resourced, just like the Pacific strategy, just like the Māori strategy and the future direction plan. So there's a lot of challenges currently, but there's also a lot of opportunity, and I think the timing of this conference is perfect in terms of where Oranga Tamariki is at in terms of our transformation program and the enabling communities part. And yeah, so we look forward to coming to engage in the near future. We've had some conversations, but not to the extent we need to, which needs to happen in the next couple of months. So look forward to seeing you all again in a couple of months. And I just wanted to share this one. I know many of you will be familiar with this awhia vave, which awhia vave o olo va'a, ia alu na oi. Oh, I must have been thinking of my new brand. Sorry, my spelling's a little bit. Ai whia tuli mamao le taunu unga tātou alo whaatasi, should be whaatasi, toi whai. Ia toi whai lau tau loto. Ai whia vave o olo va'a, alu na oi. Ai whia tuli mamao le taunu unga tātou alo whaatasi. If you want to go fast, go alone. I say with accent. If you want to go far, yeah, go together. So my promise and commitment to you all is that we will do our very best to work alongside you in the next couple of years as we embark on this enabling communities, and most of all that we work as well as we can with you to make sure all of our children, our Pacific children, and our families are kept safe in their homes and in our communities, and that they have the blessing, that they receive the blessing that they so rightly have, in their lives to fulfill their plans as God has planned for them. So whawhai tele lava ia manguiri tatou aso. Whawhai.
Whawhai tele lava lawa whionga, ai olu potea sina, ai ono Chief Advisor Pacific, Office of the Chief Executive, Oranga Tamariki, and we have a gift for you. And just for your next presentation, just to work more closely with your EA, that would be so greatly appreciated. And I can assure you, Aiolu Potea, on behalf of the small group of men here today, none of us were sleeping. That is the way we lead, by modeling the type of behavior we want to see in our families. And the other way we lead is by allowing our wives, our partners, full access to bank accounts so that when they spend the mortgage payment and you are unaware and go, where's this charge gone from Dressmart? We let our women lead the way. And that's not a person, I just pulled that example out of the air. Not a personal story at all. Okay, family, on to our next presenters from Aroturiki Tamariki Independent Children's Monitor, Executive Director Aaron Jones, and Regional Manager Holika Uhila. Big round of applause.
Tamoa ata whatapu e tamai mawhi. Whatapu e nge whanau mo makapuna hau eiki. Whatapu atu ki a hamata pule. Ata ne whatapu ki whaiwhikau mo haka lotu. Tupe mua ke whatapu ma ke heni ki he pot ngau e konu whalele tau pokalama. Moana Connect. Malai tōngia, Jacinta, Whaalili Fidau, Dr. Tawila Percival, Dr. Sadie Daufa, Yvonne, who made the connection, and Lois, who worked behind the scene. So I want to just honor you and say thank you. Whatapuen ke maupule lahi ke Aaron Jones. Whatapuen ke Sola Moi Vulangi, ka hausia tau whanau. Ko kingoa ko Holika Uhila, nei whale ai vavau. Ko lele mai mei holonga, hofu vavau, mokola motua. So my name is Holika Uhila. I'm one of 4 regional managers for Aroturiki Tamariki, the Independent Children's Monitor. But first, before we start, can I just acknowledge Alapatia and all the previous speakers, but also the speakers in the breakout session. It's been wonderful to attend such a conference. I have the easier role, really, of just introducing our executive director here. But before I do that, I just really want to honor this man who's been leading our organization. We've been talking about we're a new established organization, and you've got a man that can dress up in a whaitanga and a tupenu. You mean that we're serious about leading the way for Pacific. And I remember when I left Oranga Tamariki, Dr. Tawila Percival, she said to me, Holika, you know what? You're leaving, but I want you to look at, establishing Pacific or bringing Pacific into it. I joined the organization as one of 2 Pacific at the time, or no, in fact 3. And here we are now, 2 years later, we've got a Pacific Collective. So I just want to really honor our Pacific Collective team. Want to stand up? This is just some of them. So we've got our Pacific Collective, we've got members also in Wellington and Otautahi. So we're very, very privileged, and I just really want to honor Aaron Jones, Nova Bannigan, who said, you know what, we need a Pacific cultural framework. And I love attending the breakout session where Jean really put out the challenge, and she said this: elevating Pacific child well-being is achieved when structures, systems, and delivery agree and adopt. And so we've got Aaron here who said, you know what, we're commissioning you to bring in a cultural Pacific framework because we understand that Pacific is overrepresented in the care system with oranga tamariki, in the police, in the system of health, education, and also housing. So really, this is me just honoring Aaron for leading the way for us and giving us a mantle to establish our Pacific collective, but also bringing in a Pacific framework to help us do the work that we do, because we know that we need to build the cultural capability and confidence in all of our staff. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Aaron. I'll come back towards the end. So there you go. Round of applause.
Thanks, Holika. Talofa lava kia orana, ia orana malo ni sa bulavanaka, malo elele, and warm Pacific greetings to you all. When Holika, and thank you for that, Holika, but it's easy to lead someone like Holika. In fact, you don't need to lead much, you just need to follow. So thank you for your leadership too. When we were up here this morning with the Next Top Model Awards, I mentioned, we were asked about what was our highlight, and for me what brought me joy was not only last night but this morning and today, meeting some of you, getting to know you and understanding your work and what is important for you. I also comically said I love a day when I can come to work wearing jandals. I might just kick them off and go further step and wear bare feet. Which reminds me of a story. I was lucky enough to be on a holiday in Samoa, and I thought I'd go for a walk down to the store. And I thought, oh yeah, I can do that in my bare feet. And I started walking, and all the kids were looking at me and laughing. By the time I got halfway there, my feet were on fire. I was walking on the road, and so I spent the rest of the holiday with burnt feet, running into the sea to try and cool them off. So I was trying to do the thing and fit in, but it didn't really work. The other thing that I was just grateful for was Yvonne from Moana Connect. Thank you for the pineapple pie this morning. My word. I was talking to her last night, and I grew up in Porirua, and my first job was at Income Support in those days, working income in Porirua, and we used to have one of the aunties would come in and sell pineapple pies as a bit of a side hustle. And I haven't had a pineapple pie since then, and that's back in the early 90s, so grateful, Yvonne, for bringing those in, so thank you so much. I am Aaron. I am the Executive Director and have the privilege of leading this new organisation that I love so much. I love the people I get to work with, but more importantly, the people that I work for. And so I've been there for 3 years now. Our organisation is a little over 3 years old. And I'm just here, there's really one thing that I want you guys hopefully to remember from this talk. Don't worry too much about the detail and the stuff that we're going to get into, but what I want you to do is remember us, who we are. It's easy when you're wearing shirts like this, because what our intention here is to start building a relationship with you, because we want to work with you to bring forward the voices of Pacific communities into our work, so that is represented in our work. You can see those voices in our reports, and that's the intention. So please remember us. I know a lot of you have been to our stall out the front. Our team are there. You put your names down for us to reach out and connect with you. There were copies of our report, our most recent report there. There are still a few left, but most have gone. So if you want to sneak off now and grab one while you can, do so. I won't mind. But really it's that. Remember us, Aro Turuki Tamariki, the Independent Children's Monitor. Hi. So, where we're going to go. I'm going to tell you a little bit about us. I'll try and keep that kind of quick. More about what it is that we do. A little bit about our most recent report, where we're going into the future, and then a little bit about strengthening connections with yourselves. And Holika's going to talk to you a bit about how it feels to work with us, what you can expect and how it looks and feels. So that's what we're going to do. And of course we have some partai and some questions at the end. So we've been around since 2019 and we started off very small. There was only about 8 of us at the start. We are now up to 60 staff in the organisation, which is about as big as we're going to get. We've got offices here in Tamaki, Otatahi, Whanganui-a-Tara, 2 staff out in New Plymouth and 1 up in Kaio. But there are 60 of us all up. Half of our workforce are focused on spending time in communities and listening. And by that I say listening to the voices of young people, the voices of their families, the voices of caregivers, and government agencies and NGOs and anyone that's involved in their lives. So that's what half of our workforce are focused on. Government said, you know, we talked this morning, I think the panel were talking about the number of reports and reviews that get done around the oranga tamariki system, and often what you see is something horrific happens. So a pepe or a young person dies or is seriously harmed. A review gets done, and a review will make a whole lot of recommendations suggesting what could be done to prevent this from happening again. And sadly, we see this happening over and over. And so what the government has realised is what is missing is sustained monitoring. So you don't do a review, make recommendations and wait for the next one. What we need is an organisation that looks at the system, understands what is happening, then says, what are you going to do about it? Comes back next year, says, did you do the things you said you'd do? Oh yeah. Did those things make a difference? Or if they didn't, what got in the way? How can we understand what lies beneath that is preventing progress to improve the lives of our young people and our whānau? So that's essentially what we've been asked to do. We have been stood up as a monitoring agency. Our focus has been looking at children that are in state care. So the report we have out the front is focused on how well that is doing. And what government said is we're going to make some minimum standards for what those children can expect. Because when you take a child from a family and place them in state care, it is because you're trying to keep them safe and remove them from harm. So there's a real obligation on the state to make sure that those lives are improved. They have to. And those children deserve no less. And so those care standards are the minimum standards, and I emphasise minimum, about what they should expect. So for example, expectation that that child is enrolled at school, expectation that caregivers receive training and support, expectation that that child has annual health checks, dental checks, receives the services they need. So things like that, quite practical, focused standards. So we've been monitoring those for 2 years, and we have 2 reports. What is good is that we will have a report on this every year. So by that I say we go back, did you do what you said you'd do? Has it made a difference in our lives getting better? Our approach and the way we do it is twofold. We take data and information, and a lot of the sessions today have been about data, but also, so we look at the data, how many kids have been visited by social workers in the last 8 weeks, for example. But actually, like I said, we spend a lot of our time in communities collecting the qualitative information. So reading the report last night, it sang to me in terms of the approach too, because it was very heavily focused on the voice of experience. We know that data can be dangerous in the sense that you can take a number and it can mean one thing to somebody and one thing to the other, but the truth actually lies in the experience. And unless you understand how it feels, and moreover, what is working well, what are the barriers, what are the enablers, you don't really get a good understanding of the experience and how the system is working. So that's our approach. We marry both the quantitative and the qualitative up into our reporting. The way we do it, I ask our staff to go out and seek what we call the gold, go digging for the gold. So the gold to me is the root cause. What is the thing underneath that is stopping progress? So I'll give you an example. We spoke with an NGO provider that said, look, we're struggling. One of the barriers to success is we're struggling to have relationships with oranga tamariki. So you could stop there, but what you do is you ask the next question, oh, why is that? Oh, that's because we always have a different social worker turning up, and so it's really hard to create a relationship. Oh, okay. So then we go to oranga tamariki and we say, oh, so why is it that different social workers are turning up every time? Oh, it's because we've got a high turnover of staff. So you could stop there and say the problem is a high turnover of staff, but you go again. So why do you have a high turnover of staff? What is it that's causing your staff to leave? And then you start to unpick that, because unless you can fix that particular problem, you're not actually going to solve the problem of establishing good relationships. And so for me, that is the gold. And so that's why when we have conversations with yourselves, we'll be wanting to really understand what's going on underneath. Because if we can talk about that and share that, then we hope that'll help others to solve the same or similar problems and make everything go faster and better. So in terms of listening to voices, one of the most important voices to hear is that of children and their families. And so, of course, we are strangers to those families. They don't see us often. So what we make sure we do is we try and work with the likes of yourselves and others to safely and connect well with them. So when we come and work with you, we'll be looking for ways to connect with children and with family in a way that is supported, that is safe for them, so that we can have those really quality conversations. So that's how we go about doing our work, and Holika will talk about that a bit more at the end. So our most recent report on the care standards, we have a process of going around the whole of Aotearoa in 3 years. So in the last year, we visited Northland, Bay of Plenty, Auckland Central, Upper South, and Canterbury. By the end of, or by July, we'll have been around the whole country in our first cycle of 3 years, and then we go back, and we want to know what's changed and what's got better. So in producing that report, we spoke to over 1,500 people, and there's some of the numbers there. One of the most challenging areas is for us to connect with whānau, and that's kind of understandable, right? Because these are kids that have been taken away and placed into care, and sometimes they can be reluctant to want to come forward or can be difficult to reach. But we're strongly focused on trying to increase our connection with whānau and understand how the system is working for them or not. I'll just quickly skip through this because I'm just conscious of time. But you know, the things that we found in our report, and you can read about these, they're all online on our website, but they won't come as a surprise. Huge, well, not say huge, but there are big data gaps to understanding how the system is experienced. So when I talked about kids at school, we can see that they're enrolled, but I would rather know, are they attending? What does that look like for these children? And beyond that, are they achieving? And then when talking to them, what's your experience like? Do you enjoy going to school? Do you have friends? Is it working for you? So there are big data gaps, and Oranga Tamariki have committed to improving that so that we can understand the system better. One of the key things which we heard from Oranga Tamariki social workers, as well as the communities and the children themselves, is they really wanted to see their social workers more often. And for social workers in the room, that connection, that trusted relationship is so critical to understanding a child's needs, also to keeping them safe. So there's a real desire to improve that. And what we found is that in around 65%, children were only being visited about 65% of the time from when they said they would be visited. So that's some area for improvement. This one, and this was talked today as well, is about improving cultural competency. It was really seen as a strong barrier, again identified by Oranga Tamariki staff, but also by others and children, about making sure that staff have the cultural competence to actually engage well. Of course, that's one part of successful engagement, but it is very important in this area. This was a strong focus as well. Found that health and education needs, kids were not enrolled with medical practices, were unable to tell whether children were receiving those annual health checks. And again, like I said, unable to see whether they were attending school, let alone achieving. What I hope, the intention for our work is to be helpful. So by providing this transparency and accountability, our hope that this will drive improvement. I think there's a real truth in the phrase, what gets measured gets done. And so by sharing this information not only in Wellington, for decision makers, for people in head offices, but it's also for communities to work on these solutions locally too. So it's information for everyone. This has been raised again and again, won't come as a surprise, but very hard for young people to access mental health services. Those services either aren't there or they struggle to be received in a way that is meaningful for them. So another challenge. Tamariki not always being heard, so big decisions around their life and making sure that they know what is going on. We found that some of the caregiver assessments weren't being completed fully and that reviews weren't done to make sure that those placements were safe. Caregivers were looking for more support as well, a very strong theme from them. And this one is acknowledged, of course, when I talk about the oranga tamariki system, it's easy to be led to think it's just oranga tamariki, but it's not. It's everybody that plays a role in those young people's lives. And what we hear, both in this report and the previous one, is that government agencies aren't working well together to support kids. So services don't work well for me as a child, and nor did they work well together for me as a child. Same thing for me as a family member or me as a caregiver. And also staff will say the same things. There are real challenges. There's a quote that sticks in my mind from a police officer who said in one of our hui that we have joint agency hui so they can talk to each other, said, look, we all talk in these meetings together about making change, but then we go back into our organisations and focus on what is important to us and not as a collective. So there's a real strong message there, and so we would hope to see that that will change over time. So that's just a little bit about the report, but I'd encourage you to have a look. Hopefully there's information in there that you can use. One of the things that we do as well is when we visit a community, when we have finished having hui and listening, is we leave behind summaries of what we've heard. So summaries for young people, summaries for caregivers, and summaries for the community. So I'd hope when we come back to Tāmaki next year, you'll be able to access those summaries as well and use them as well as our regular reporting. I mentioned we are just focused on tamariki and care, but this is about to change. Our role gets bigger, and actually we just don't focus on those in care, and this is to me an exciting bit, we get to focus on the whole of the system, which includes all the work that's being done to innovate and try and prevent tamariki coming into care in the first place. So how are their families being supported? Is that working for them so that those tamariki can stay in those homes? When we go around the country, this is the area that people are most excited about and want to talk to me about. And I certainly know in terms of this room and having had conversations about some of the work that's being done in the Pacific community to try and prevent tamariki going into care. And so we're excited to be able to understand and tell some of those stories, because I'm a strong believer in people are more likely to follow the good than for us to be reporting on the bad. So we're looking for case studies, things that you may be doing that are showing signs of success, so that we can talk to them in our work and share it with others to show them what is possible. So that's where we're heading, a much broader focus, looking at young people that have come to the attention from oranga tamariki but aren't yet in care, what is being done to help keep them safe and in their homes. The other part, I know the Children's Commissioner, Judge Evers, was here yesterday, and we work alongside her. Her role is an advocate for all children, and she will make use of our reports and the information in them to be their advocate. And so we're quite closely connected with the Children's Commissioner, as we are with the Ombudsman as well. So I think that's probably enough from me. Hopefully that gives you a bit of a snapshot. Like I said, bit of information dumped there for you, but the one thing I want you to remember is Aro Turiki Tamariki, the Independent Children's Monitor. We will be coming to your community soon, and would love to work with you and listen to what you have to say. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Eric. So we will be coming back to Auckland to do our monitoring visit in Auckland in March of next year, but we'll be doing our planning in October. So we would love, as Aaron mentioned, our focus has now grown and it's a lot broader. When I worked at Oranga Tamariki, what Pacific do really well is a prevention space of stopping children coming in to care compared to Māori. So that was a really fascinating area. So I am calling out to you Pacific providers. You know, when we went out to South Auckland just recently, my heart broke because I rang a number of our Pacific providers that had no dealings with children in care. I visited one of the mainstream organisations that provide care for our children, and I came across two Tongan children cared for by Palangi, shared their experience with me, and I was really disheartened to think, where is our Pacific providers? Why are they not caring or supporting our Pacific children in care, as Alopatia has alerted Auckland has got our biggest children in care, and that's really significant. So I think I'm putting out the challenge. I've got names of providers out with me in a list. If you are doing some incredible work, As a community, we'd love to hear that. We'd love to lift that and put a spotlight and say, actually, this is working really well. Because in all of our report, we're saying the same things around mental health, caregiver support. But this time around, we want to highlight some of the great work that you're doing out of the community. So I'm calling out to you, some of our big providers, South Seas, what are the great initiatives you're doing with our Pacific people who have connection to oranga tamariki, to the police, to education and so forth. We want to meet with you to lift the voices and experiences of our families. And I was just talking with Hana, who's the Deputy Mayor for Oamaru. I put the challenge out to her, is there any families down in Oamaru? Because that's one of the fastest growing population group. And she said immediately, I can think of a family who have experience in the care system or oranga tamariki. So our role really, we have a really privileged role, and we get really excited because we go and interview children, our Pacific children, young people, and lift their voice and their experience, and not just the children, but we're asking you to put forward the families, because we really want to get their experience, because the system won't change unless we lift the voice of our families as well who support the children. And so that's why I'm very, very fortunate to be working at Aroturiki Tamariki, because I get to lead not only the Auckland region with the highest population of Pacific, but we have this great opportunity in the report to have something which includes our Pacific voice and the difference that you're making out in the community for our people. So I'm putting that challenge out to you. We're excited. We'll be planning this side of the year because we know that come December, services break out for Christmas. So we'll be doing some of our engagement in October and doing some socialization. So we'll love to come out, because we're a new organization, fairly new, love to come out and talk to you about who we are and what we do. And I've got Fa'asau, and Fa'asau will be leading our team, our monitoring team in Auckland. So as we come back to March, we'll be prepared to then interview and capture those voices of our Pacific, our children and young people, which we're really passionate about. Is that right, team? And one of the things that will really support us is, I've already spoken to Ben, who deliver cultural training for staff, is that I want to put our staff through that cultural training. Because whilst we've only got a small number of our Pacific, we've also got a responsibility to train our workforce around engaging with our Pacific. So another example, Manurewa, South Auckland, significant number of Cook Island families we engaged with in our recent engagement in South Auckland. I was talking to Dr. Saini outside, and she was saying that Otahuhu have got our biggest number of Pacific children in care in that office. So there's an opportunity, but my question is, who are supporting our families and our children in these sites so that we can engage with you to lift their voice and their experience and help change the system? So I think that's pretty much our time, Aaron. I'll leave it at that. So that's our presentation for today. Malo apito ofatu.
A very big thank you to Honika and Aaron from Aroturiki Tamariki Independent Children's Monitor. And a gift for you both. Thank you. Malo apito. You look very good in those jandals. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you. Just a quick notice, family. One of our delegates is missing a Samsung phone, a black Samsung phone with a sticker on the back. So if you found it, just bring it to the side and we'll show it after the next speakers. I would like to now invite for the next presentation, Pauline of Wimono Sanders, Interim National Workforce Lead, Pacific Health, Te Whatu Ora, and co-presenter Carissa Thompson, I think a women's health advocate. Thank you both.
Whatalo whatu, ia te o tau uma, malo lava, maua, malilangi e mama, whawhitai, mole awa noa. Thank you to the Moana Connect team for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Pauline Fuimono-Sanders, and as our MC said, I'm the Interim National Pacific Health Workforce Lead Te Whatu Ora, and I've co-opted my colleague here at last minute who graciously accepted the invitation to present with me. So.
Tēnā rā koutou katoa. As you just heard, I was also voluntold, and in the Māori culture we would use the whakatauki mā te tuakana ka tōtika te teina, mā te teina ka tōtika te tuakana. For the older child must show the younger how they shall go, therefore voluntold. And from the younger child, the elder must learn patience. So, you know, same. Ko Carissa Thompson taku ingoa, he uri a hau ki te tai tokero, ngā te kahu, ngā puhi, ngā te hini, oku iwi.
So we're going to be talking about Pacific Health Workforce. So I'm just going to quickly go through these, the changes that have been happening in the health system. So up until 30th of June, it was quite a complex system. 20 DHBs, 30 PHOs, 12 public health units. So there was a review of the health system, and the changes were made within legislation. So in the Paiora Healthy Futures Act 2022, the changes that we are now seeing are written into legislation. So this is important because it is the first, it explicitly talks about addressing equity, but it's the first time that Pacific Health has been explicitly included in legislation. So very important for Pacific. So from the 1st of July 2022, the changes have started to happen. So you would have seen there's a lot happening in the health system, a lot of unifying to simplify. You may have heard that phrase. And essentially, Manatū Hauora, Ministry of Health, are now focused on strategy, policy and monitoring. Te Whatu Ora Health New Zealand is the delivery arm of the health system, so delivery and operations. And Te Akawhai Ora, the Māori Health Authority, has a dual role. One of the roles for Te Akawhai Ora is to hold the system accountable for Māori health outcomes, but also has a co-commissioning role with Te Whatu Ora. So the 5 system shifts that we have, I'm just going to point out the workforce shift, because I know you'll be familiar with all of these. So developing and growing our workforce. And we have Te Pai Tata. So Te Pai Tata is the interim New Zealand health plan that is guiding us in terms of the actions that we need to undertake in the health system right now, and there are a lot of foundational changes required with that. Now within Te Pai Tata is Ola Manawea, which is the interim Pacific Health Plan. So that is helping us, helping guide us with the changes that we need to have for Pacific Health, and that's taking us through to June 2024. So there are a lot of health strategies being developed, 6 health strategies. One of them is the Pacific Health Strategy. Now, a lot of you may be involved in the engagement that's happening at the moment. So the Manatū Hauora Pacific Health team have been going around the country, engaging with teams and communities to understand their experience, and the aim is to have that Pacific Health Strategy completed by June 2023. And of course the New Zealand Health Workforce Strategy, so that is being developed this year and will be completed in December 2023. And I just want to bring another important strategy for Pacific, which is La Langa Fau, the Pacific Wellbeing Strategy. Now this is important because it crosses all agencies, so this is not just health or not just education. There's links across, right across all the sectors. So in Ola Manawea, we have outlined in there the Pacific Health priorities. and also those key enablers that will support us achieving the goals and outcomes we want for Pacific Health. And so, as you can see, mothers and babies is one of those Pacific Health priorities, and workforce development is a key enabler for that. So, who is our Pacific workforce? So this workforce data is about 12 months old now, so we will be getting a refresh in data now, now that we've come to March. Just want to acknowledge the Manatū Hauora team. Dr. Karina Gray collated this data, and we're going to be working closely together as we move forward. So you can see the numbers are not looking the greatest. So the middle column shows the percentage of the Pacific workforce within their occupational group. So, for example, for nursing's 3.9% of the total number of nurses, midwifery 3%, and so on. And there's been a calculation of a 10-year forecast. So if we do nothing and continue as we are at the current growth, there's going to be minimal growth in our Pacific Health workforce. And just to go through some other specialties there, so these medical specialties, so you can see the numbers are small. And other allied health workforces there, and you can see again, we have really small numbers. Now that's our regulated workforce. Now our unregulated workforce, or the gifted te reo name is kaiawhina, we have double the number of workforce in this category. So what that means is we have a huge opportunity, to really grow and develop this particular workforce and help pathway them through into undergraduate courses into the regulated workforce. Now within the Pacific Health workforce itself, nurses make up the largest component. Any nurses in the house? You. Carissa and I are both registered nurses as well, by the way. And then doctors, make up the next biggest group. And you can see, I'm not going to read them all out, but so it's about 3,500 of us that are Pacific in the workforce at the moment. And you can see it's 3.1%. So we know, even if we take today's numbers, we're 8% of the population, we've got a long way to go. But if we're really looking at forecasting, we're going to be 10% of the population in 10 years, and that's where we really need to aim. So we have done some more forecasting. So if we wanted to get to 10% in 10 years, we've got a lot of work to do. We really have to change fundamentally how we approach growth and development of the workforce. So if we take nurses, for example, for us to reach 10% in 10 years, we would have to graduate about 600 Pacific nurses every year for the next 10 years. That's the number that we're talking about. At the moment, we're graduating about 150. So what are we doing about it? So for the first time, there's a dedicated team that has been established in Te Whatu Ora that's focused on workforce. So at the moment we are very small. It's myself and I have a program manager with me. So regardless, we are a very precious resource, so we really have to use our time and our expertise as efficiently as possible. So we're not involved in everything intimately. For important things we are, but some we are influencing. The main activities that we are looking at focusing on are delivering the actions within Ola Manuia. So there are workforce-specific actions in Ola Manuia, and one of those things is to develop a Pacific Health workforce strategy. We're also influencing how models of care are developed in different areas across the system, and looking at that investment, because we need more money invested, not just in Pacific Health workforce, but in the models of care development. So we do have a small budget. It's only $12.5 million at the moment, focused on Pacific Health workforce development. But what our job is to really carve out funding from the mainstream funding pools to also support Pacific workforce development. What we have also established is the Pacific Health Senate, so that has just commenced this year. So there's a really key forum for the Pacific Health Directorate to help guide and influence those transformative changes that are required in the system. So we have a couple of members here tonight actually. Dr. Tuila Percival and Ngāti Paeru Masters are here. So what we had an expressions of interest process, and we tried to match the roles and skills to the health priorities. We haven't quite got everyone there yet, but this is where we're starting. And I'm privileged to have Sir Colin Tukuitonga as our chair. What we've done also is utilised the principles that have been developed in La Langafol to really help our non-Pacific colleagues ask those questions on what is best for Pacific in those different areas. So this is just adapted to workforce specifically, but it can be used across, the whole system. So it's really helping us those key questions that will support what we need to do. So in workforce development, there are really key things that we need to be looking at. We need to be looking at how training is developed. We need modular training. We need recognition of prior learning and experience. We need micro-credentialing. We need earn and learn models because, we know it's hard to stop working, to go and study, and then come back to work. So, what are those other models that we can use that are already existing and we just need to grow and support? The other things are things like, having culturally supportive environments, and that's for students when they go into placement, but also in employment. Because we have had feedback from students and new people into the workforce that their experience has not wanted them to stay. So all of us need to be thinking about that. So there has been a national approach to workforce. So the three organisations have come together to be more coordinated in how we recruit, how we grow, and how we develop workforce. So this is whole of system. It's looking at all sectors, both private, public, but also secondary, primary, community, aged residential care, all areas, and all professional groups. So it has been joint leadership between Te Whatu Ora and Te Akawhai Ora, and Pacific Health sit in Te Whatu Ora, but we're also a very key partner in the development. You may have heard about a workforce task force. So that was developed last year to really kind of push, to push the growth, into the workforce. But we know it's taken many, many years to get to this point. So it's going to take us a little bit of time, to get things moving in a positive direction. In the task force, there are 6 working groups that are focused on the professional groups and the development in those professional groups. So you can see nursing, midwifery, medical, allied health, technical, scientific, administration and general management, and kaiawhina. So while they are developing in their own professional groups, the models of care work bring the groups together into teams. So there's a multi-pronged approach. Also within the task force is looking at those other things that are key enablers, like working with education, working with the regulatory authorities, which are an important part of change, and also the organisational development changes that need to happen. So there are lots of different programs happening in the health system at the moment, and a couple of the key ones are localities. So you would have heard of localities. Some of you may be involved in localities. So that's really where the models of care development will happen. It's the direct connection to community. So this is where the community is saying, these are the services we want. These are how that we want them delivered. But Kahutaurima is a very important program that's been developed, which my lovely colleague Carissa will pick up and describe for you. So just reminding everyone, mothers and babies are a priority for Pacific Health. And I shall pass the time to Carissa.
feel like a bit of a fraud actually standing here as tangas whenua. But I am growing the melting pot of the South Pacific with a Samoan, Tahitian, Cook Island, Māori baby. So I'm sure she'll help me along the way, baby? So what I didn't say at the start was actually I am with Te Whatu Ora National Office. I am the portfolio manager with Kahu Taurima currently, and I say currently because those of you who are in health will have heard there were some announcements yesterday about our jobs. But I took a sidetrack to get here, and I think having listened to the conversations this morning about having more Māori and more Pacific at the table, I just kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit. So I started my nursing career in Auckland. I went to the University of Auckland, then went to Starship, and then came out to counties, out to Middlemore, and then ended up being clinical or senior nurse advisor for the Mana Kids program that's based out here. And it was only when I came out here that I actually started to understand a little bit more about Pacific health. Sidetrack that to the side is when you're Māori or you're Pacific and you are a nurse in different areas, you're asked to do lots of different jobs. So not only do I have this job at the moment, I am also in a consultancy, and I sit on some research stuff and this is the plight of those who choose to do what we do. But it's important that we do sit at the table. Now the most important part when we are at the table is that we have decision-making roles. We don't just sit there and advise. We don't just sit there and wave the right flag. We are the people that sit there and say, actually, no, we're not spending the money like that. We're going to spend it like this, and that is the decision, and that's how we're going to make it. And at that point, we're doing that for our whānau. So I did the sidetrack, and then I said, once upon a time when I did some leadership training, I said, over my dead body, will I end up at the Ministry of Health? And 2 years ago, it ended up at the Ministry of Health. And so that's why, you know, when we hear those stories and those conversations like this morning on the panel, it is very important that we sit there. And with all the health reforms that are going on, now is the right time for people to put their hands up. I've always found it really difficult because I left school, went straight into nursing, then went straight into management, and people don't like it when you're young and Māori and female, when you're trying to tell them how to do things. It's just not going to work. So I ended up in this Well Child Tamariki Order team, and over this last period of time, we've actually transitioned into Kahu Taurima. So while I still hold a technical title of Portfolio Manager, Well Child Tamariki Order, and Before School Checks, I'm now more in Kahu Taurima, and this is arguably the only transformational space in Te Whatu Ora, Te Aka Whai Ora in health right now. And the reason why I say that is because, as you see there, Kahu Taurima is about preconception through to the first 2,000 days. If we get the first 2,000 days right, we get the next 2,000 years right. But we start here. And we start here not from a place of deficit. We start here from a place of well-being. And when I kind of asked to come along to this week and I saw the name of it, we're coming from a place of well-being now. Technically, our children shouldn't need healthcare. Technically, we shouldn't be the intersection at every touch point for children in health, because if we were doing a good job with all the markers of poverty, then our children wouldn't be in our system as frequently. Nevertheless, they are there, and this part of the Kahu Taurima work was very intentional. And the reason why I go back to that is because Kahu Taurima, their name, was actually gifted. There was a group of men and women, and mostly fathers actually, who sat around and discussed what Kahu Taurima meant, what the preconception to the first 2,000 days meant. And for those fathers who were in the room, it was about being involved in their child and involved in growing that baby, because for the first 9 months, they get a really good job at the start of it, and they may, if they're really lucky, get to catch the baby at the end of those 9 months. But otherwise, they're there watching and supporting and nurturing. But we actually don't do a lot for our fathers in this space right now. And so when they named it, Kahu is like a korowai. So it's like a cloak. And taurima really goes back to the potential of the child. So it's the love, it's the nurturing, it's the caring of that pepe and that child. And why it got chosen is because someone wanted to go with he kakano. And yeah, I don't know if you've been around too many things, but he kakano was on everything. Everyone knows that he kakano is the seed. And these tāne said to us, nah, don't do that. Coin a name or give it a name that has purpose. And so this kahu taurima is about the cloak that we put around whānau so that they can grow that baby. And so this change has an essence that's beyond just a name. And the people who are currently working in this space know that it's more than just a name, the essence behind it. You can also see down in this bottom corner the tohu, or the logo of kahu taurima. We went back to the kakano because, you know, us wahine, we're always going to get our way at the end of the day, but it talks about the duality. And the duality of tāne wahine, the duality of papatuanuku, rangi nui. It's the duality of the workforce and whānau. Because what is good for the workforce is going to be great for whānau. And what is great for whānau is going to be good for the workforce. So the importance of kahu taurima is that there's been an investment and an injection of investment for this period of time. There is co-commissioning between Te Aka Whaiora and Te Whatuora, which most definitely is Te Tiriti focused. And for me, the most critical part of it is that the privileged voice is whānau. So all whānau, not just whānau Māori, whānau everyone. That is the privileged voice that kahu taurima have written into all their work. So the scope of kahu taurima is basically, and it's not just this, but it's the maternity work, anything that was sat in maternity services. It's well child tamariki order, so those are the 8 core checks. It's, including before school checks, which is the 8th check. And we will be looking at changing the service so that it caters for whānau, caters for tamariki, but it also caters for the workforce. And there are tensions there, I appreciate, but like I said before, what is great for the workforce is going to be the best for whānau, and what's best for whānau is going to be great for the workforce. So it's about no matter where they live, whānau will get the best service. They've broken it down into priority areas of care, and as you see, priority number 1 is Te Ao Māori models. That was always going to be the case with Paitata and with the Pai Ora Bill. But number 2, thankfully, is Pacific models of care. And that's a piece of work that Pauline and I, which is how I ended up standing here today, are on. And that is because right now we have few Pacific voices in the team in kahu taurima. And so when I was sitting at the table and we were talking about Pacific models, and I looked to my left and I looked to my right and I thought, well, I'm going to have to say something. And that's when we started to kind of make that noise around that space. Because again, like I said at the start, when you're Māori or Pacific and you get put into these jobs, you end up with a million hats, a million pōtai to wear. And I knew that my mates over here were swamped with their work. And if I didn't put my integrity on the line and just say, look, stop, I'm actually going to go over there and do that work with them, it probably wouldn't have happened, and we would probably be a little bit stuck. So around these, so of course you can read the others. For me, Pacific models of care are about child wellbeing, Pacific child wellbeing. Within this, we're at a space now where we can actually fund Pacific providers. We have had 11 million signed off for the next few years, and another 6 after that for out years funding. So that's, that's public servant speak, which I learnt when I had to go to the ministry, and despite not wanting to be there. And so with that funding, this allows by Pacific for Pacific. So this is allowing providers, or enabling, nationally enabling, and I just find that term a little bit difficult, but anyway, nationally enables providers in the location or in a locality to tell us what a Pacific model is, how they're going to put it into place, and then show us how it works. This is a really interesting place because for those of you who work in commissioning, which honestly is a little bit boring, and I know I'm going to, stop soon, but in the commissioning space, national commissioning has been a real challenge in Ministry of Health. And Ministry of Health, because they had this, what's it called, the Public Finance Act, and so you had to follow this and everything to the letter, and it was exceptionally colonised and exceptionally institutionalised. Once we shifted across the commissioning, and it was very intentional by the ministers, once the funding shifted across to Te Whatu Order and Te Aka Whai Order, we no longer go by the Public Finance Act, but we now have a Crown Entity Act. And that allows us to directly commission, so directly pay for services with providers. When I first started at the ministry, I got told, no, you can't go and talk to those providers. Meanwhile, they're my mates. But anyway, you can't go and talk to those providers about what they're doing. You've got to go through the District Health Board's portfolio manager. And it was a very contractual, power and control type of behaviour. And that's just the nature of the beast and the system that we're trying to change. And as I shifted into the work, I found a couple of places that I could go and have relational contracting. One of those was over in Tairāwhiti, which, thankfully they ended up getting a bit more money. But this is what we are hopeful to do in this space around the Pacific models of care, and it is going to allow us to evidence the services that Pacific whānau deserve in the community, and that will become a national framework. So for me it's exciting because if we go back to kahu taurima, it's about the wraparound support of what I've heard in the workshops. It's the workforce need to be addressed. It's fathers need to have a voice. It's whānau education, it's family planning, it's all of those things that we no longer want to box up and go, actually, midwives, you can only see that baby until they're 6 weeks of age. Because I don't know about most of the midwives out here, but my whānau up home, they're seeing babies till they're 2 because, auntie's just down there and you just go and drop down and get her. So those are the nuances that we're starting to see creep in. And why? Because the first privilege is whānau voice. So, I rambled along, and the reason why I probably didn't tell many people what I did as a job is because, it's quite a tense place at the moment in kahu taurima, but I'm doing what I can with Pauline and Cassius and others in the team to get this right. Because we have to, we don't have a choice. So, ngā mihi nui kia koutou.
Thanks, Carissa. So, what else? What else? Because there's so much that needs to happen, and what else is happening in this space? So, we have a graduate diploma in nursing that is designed specifically for Pacific trained nurses to gain registration in New Zealand. So this is the first program of its kind, starting in July this year. So if anyone's interested, please contact me. So this is going to not only bring Pacific nurses that understand the culture, that have the language, but Pacific trained nurses are obstetric trained as well. So they're going to be bringing all of that knowledge in. Now, we have started discussions with our midwifery colleagues to see, could we have an equivalent program if Pacific trained nurses want to pathway into midwifery. So really exciting. We've had great interest so far. And there is some funding support for some Indigenous Pacific nurses going through that program. We also have a program to support undergraduate students, both in nursing and in midwifery. And we have Ngāti Pairu Masters here, who's the national lead in that program, because we know attrition rates are really high for Pacific students. So these programs are there to support keeping them in the courses and completing, but we need to grow them. We also need to work with our education colleagues, because there's a responsibility from an education perspective to keep our students in and graduating. Our vaccinator workforce, you'll know through COVID, I'm sure pretty much everyone here was involved in COVID, and the amazing opportunity that community people who came in to help could give COVID vaccinations. We're now building that pathway so they can give childhood vaccinations, which we all know are sorely needed, and our vaccination rates are so low at the moment. So great opportunity there. Also within organisational space, we are working with the regions to see how we can start building a coordinated, cohesive network of Pacific Health workforce and providing that cultural support in the workplace. As I mentioned before, the micro-credentials, so really amazing opportunity to see how we can have our Pacific kaiawhina pathway to get recognised in the education system with the experience and knowledge that they have gained over years, and how we can create those clear pathways so if they wanted to go into undergraduate study, it is clear for them on how to do that. You'll have many examples, and those may be working with you, of where they have years of experience, but there's no course per se, that kind of lines up or recognises them, and in addition to, knowing the language and culture. And Ununu models I've mentioned before. There's the Return to Nursing Midwifery Fund. And yeah, just some other things around, scholarships, having scholarships more easily, be able to find them more easily. So there is a piece of work that we're wanting to undertake to have one portal for all Pacific scholarships. So it's just easy to get in there, and it leads you there. But also having flexibility with that, because some scholarships say if you apply for this scholarship, you can't apply for other scholarships. But we know that, it's not just paying your fees, that is going to help you with your studies. Supporting the advanced practice in those key areas and health priorities. And alongside that is, if people are going to study, helping them to get employment, in those advanced roles and senior roles. So we've started. There's a long way to go. Data is obviously a really key component. Data's sits in lots of different areas, so we don't have complete data per se, but what the data we do have is based on what's available in the regulatory authorities through the APC data, but we need to do a lot more work in that area. And supporting our non-Pacific colleagues with how to be culturally safe in their practice and how to understand how you apply equity in practice. So that's important for your, working with families, but also actually how we shape the system and change how we deliver services. So yeah, as I mentioned, education's a key partner, but our community is the most important partner, and the more we work with our communities and bring their voice through, the better that we can develop our services. So that's it from us. Thank you so much for your time. Whakataitele lava.
Very big thank you, Pauline and Carissa, and a small gift for your time. Thank you both so much, really appreciate it. Just to note that the Samsung phone that was lost was handed in, so the owner, please come to the side desk. I want to acknowledge the delegate that handed it in. I'm not going to ask you to stand because there were 4 failed attempts at login on the phone, but the owner, you can come and collect your phone on the side there. Now, after our next speaker, our final speaker, we're going to go directly to our closing summary before some final remarks for the end of the conference. With that, it is my honour and privilege to welcome Malaitonia Jacinta Fa'alili Fido, Chief Executive Officer for Moana Connect. Marosoi fua, lau tō whā Malaitonia.
How are we all doing? I'm sure you're all very thrilled about hearing yet another presentation. But look, just in the interest of time, I want to draw on all the beautiful Pacific greetings over the last 2 days that we have heard in all of our 9 official languages. I also want to draw on all of the stunning acknowledgements of tangata whenua and the land in which we stand and reside in. I also want to say that I feel humbled and privileged and honoured to be giving some closing remarks for today. And I respect you all, especially all of you here who are here right to the very end of our 2 days. And what a thrilling 2 days it has been. You all deserve a medal just for being here. But look, I have a presentation, but I'm going to do a bit of a vito. Vito's here. I'm going to do a bit of a vito because I put together this presentation to talk about the report that we had prepared. But I'm not going to talk to all of it. And look, the reality is we actually need a lot more Pacific researchers. So I'm going to call on all of you to be Pacific researchers, and I'm going to give you some homework. I'm actually going to invite you all to please download a copy of Te Maiti o le Moana. Please go through and do some analysis, some coding, and to read upon some of the recommendations that we've made. I want you to see where you see yourself and how you can contribute to it. Because this has been drawn upon research and voices and a lot of the themes that have come from you. You, our community, you, our Pacific peoples. A lot of the stuff that we've drawn on, and I know there's been a lot of acknowledgement of Moana Connect and putting this report together, but actually we've simply compiled a lot of what you've been saying for such a long time. I do want to acknowledge the Mass Foundation. All of this was made possible because the Mass Foundation gave us a grant. The wonderful Mafi and Dr. Julie, there they are, can you please stand up? The heads of the Mass Foundation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So Pacific Child Advocacy, led by our great leader, Dr. Tuila Percival, we have for a long time really been neglecting children in a lot of our conversations. And that was the main driver for this report. And I know we always talk about the importance of family, making sure our mothers are well taken care of, our dads are well taken care of, and that children are an extension of their parents. But what that also does is we sometimes ignore the lens of a child. And so we really wanted to reflect them in here. And I guess the main message for us is that, now is the time to take action, bold action. We also didn't want to slay anybody, okay? This isn't, nobody reacts positively when people tell you you're bad or you're terrible, you're not doing enough. And so we really wanted to highlight a lot of the positives that we are already doing, that you're already doing. And we could have gone through and said, we need to do more immunizations and breastfeeding, and, we could have gone through and been a lot more specific. We chose housing and income because our social determinants of health are 2 things that a lot of people put in the too hard basket, or it's outside of scope. Hence the emphasis that we've had on housing and income. And again, it was really about propelling existing solutions and a lot of what works within our communities. These are the 4 main areas, and again, you've heard them all through the last 2 days. Healthy homes, having enough to live on, access to care and health care that they need, and you've heard about the implications of workforce and so on, and definitely education that sustains their cultures and languages. Everything harks back to these 4 things. And as we said, we're already making progress in some of these areas. Even in the area of housing, we're making some great progress. But these are the things I want you to study. I want you to all be researchers. Go through and just read them in greater detail, because the advocacy can't stop here. If it stops here, then these 2 days have been a talk fest. We don't want these 2 days to be yet another talk fest. We really need you to please think about what you can do from here on in. What role can we play? Continue to advocate, continue to mention, be bold in those spaces, in those meetings that you're in. Advocacy too isn't just about advocating upwards to our leaders, it's advocating to each other, sharing with each other what's happening and what's working in your hood and in your areas. Listen to children. Sure, children can say strange things, right? But actually, I did my PhD in resilience, and children are incredible. We can't underestimate some of what they know. Some of these children know they're poor. They know that they don't have enough as some of the other kids at school. But what they do is they're team players. They know that they've got to contribute to their families. And when I talk to them, they say, oh yeah, I try and do some chores. I try and hard at school because, I know my parents are working 2 jobs. Really listen to them. Really understand their world. We're not with children 24/7. And so they too are navigating the world in different areas. And so, also, like I said, work to make changes within your area of influence, even within our own households. We too need to be accountable within our own families and our own households. It's not easy, but just, again, every little bit makes a difference, and collaborate where possible. What I've loved about the last 2 days is that it has been probably one of the most diverse conferences that we've had in a while. Not just in terms of ethnicity, even though we've had that representation, but it's been diverse in terms of the sectors that we've had, not just health. We've had education, our ECEs in our schools. We've had social development and oranga tamariki. We've had our academics here, our community groups, all our providers. So, it's really important, and our families and children as well. So we need to keep this going. We need to work together, keep collaborating. And then I guess the next steps, these are some practical things that we will be doing. What we really wanted to do before we launched this report was that we wanted everybody to sign up to it as we advocated to each and every agency and, some of the organisations that we really want to write to ask for their response, formal response to the recommendations that we've made in the report. What's been wonderful is that we've heard verbally what their response is from some of our political leaders and a lot of the organisations who have had an ability to speak. So it's been wonderful to hear their feedback as well. And I guess, again, I'm sure you've heard this before, prevention. We can't keep responding because it's very expensive. We know that actually it's very expensive to respond to broken families. So if we can focus on the prevention end, which is what this, which is what this is, if we can work on the prevention end, then I think we will make our job a lot easier. I also really want to, while I've got the microphone, say some thank yous on behalf of Moana Connect, just over the last 2 days. I guess for us, we've had more than 500 people pass through day 1, and probably close to that here on day 2. It's really evident that, it's the right time. It's the right time to bring us all together to have these sorts of conversations. And I think too, we really just want to acknowledge you all for the great work that you're doing, but please keep going, Our hope is that you will leave here having refilled your kite, and also nourished yourself and your soul with all the wonderful sharing that we've had over the past 2 days. We have had leaders of our nation avail themselves, keynotes and leaders of children, systems, community groups, providers, and even just, our churches, the Sunday schools that you've heard over the past 2 days, our medical workforce, our doctors, pediatricians and GPs, just making the time to be here to share. I have been trying to keep it together because I've been to some of the breakout sessions, and I went to the Whalelalanga one, and I was quite surprised at how emotional I got seeing our tīnā matutua at the front of a breakout session as our experts. I go to so many conferences, and often our experts are ones with all of the qualifications and all of the doctors and professors in front of them. And we keep talking about community have the solutions, but we never really bring them on board and take them on the journey with us to share some of the evidence. And so when I saw Penina and our wonderful tīnā matutua present, and they were all sitting up the front, it was an actualization of the vision that actually Pacific child wellbeing is everybody's business, and actually our experts are those who have the wisdoms, our cultural knowledge and traditions that we call innovations, that we say are innovations, but they're not. They've been there all along. We're just slowly starting to acknowledge that. And I told myself I didn't want to name people, because you know how when you forget people, you feel really stink. So I just want to, again, thank you all. Thank you also to our allies, all of our non-Pacific colleagues and friends who have been here over the past 2 days. Please know that we see and appreciate you as well. Your allyship is really important, because I know that there's a lot of stuff that may not make sense to you, but I guess true allyship is trusting that it makes complete sense to us. Our solutions and approaches make complete sense to us as Pacific peoples, and if you trust that our vision too is the right vision, then you being and walking alongside us is a wonderful thing. So thank you for that. And you've heard of all of our sponsors throughout the past 2 days. No government agency has been harmed in the making of this conference. Instead, our providers have come to the party. They have shared the financial ask for this conference. Leva, South Seas Healthcare, IMAC, The Whono, ProCare, and Pacifica Futures. These are the providers who led and cared for us all through COVID. And now, they're the ones who are helping to shift systems and are now heeding the call to do better by our children. So thank you so much to Pastor Andre for all of your blessings, all of our keynote speakers, plenary sessions, and our breakout session presenters, our store holders and our MBV exhibition. I'm going to name them all. South Seas, IMAC, The Whono, Plunkett, Independent Children's Monitor, Pacific Kids Learning. Did you enjoy the videos? Those digital videos, weren't they amazing? Paparazzi Productions too, with one of the videos, we collaborated with them. Growing Up in New Zealand study, the Paediatric Society of New Zealand, Wharaurau, PARA, which is the Perinatal Anxiety and Depression Aotearoa, MIT. We had the MIT students also helping us. They were absolutely incredible. If you are an MIT lecturer, please give them extra credits. They absolutely deserve it for the past 2 days. Also Net from Wellington. Whalelalanga and Penina and your beautiful team. The Fiji Masi Tapa team, the Iepili Sedans. I know many of you were making your eikatu to take home with you. That was all Sedans. Our infant massage group, the Māori Weavers, Under the Bird, they're selling beautiful earrings, and claw jewelry. Baby Loss New Zealand. Please, if you're going to choose an organisation to make a donation to, Baby Loss New Zealand, okay? We have the highest rates of stillbirth, miscarriages. It's a silent epidemic. Please give them all the money and all the love. Good Seed Trust, Variety New Zealand, Te Ora Puawai, and the MBV team. And again, just all of our facilitators. We called on our fellow researchers, our advisory group. I really want to name you, but I'm sorry I can't. Our photographer, our videographer, the multimedia company, and also the Dewdrop Event Centre. They've been really patient with us because, we want this and that and everything. Marley, our timekeeper, who did the conch shell, and also Jean. I'm so glad I don't have the last word. So Jean Mataira has the last word, who's going to summarise for us. And last but not least, our children. So yesterday, our children who led the prayers, and they took their job really seriously yesterday of doing the lays and doing the gifts. We didn't want to do it over 2 days because I think by day 2, it's bordering on child abuse when you're making the children do all that work over the 2 days. And just all the positive disruptions when you heard just babies and children running around, I think is just a wonderful reminder of why we're here. But it would be remiss of me not to thank the team. I want to apologize if you didn't get a lanyard or a tote bag or a t-shirt, if you didn't like the food or it was too noisy, or what you needed for your presentation. But please know that my team gave this the all. They gave it the all. And as you observed, sorry. Yes, please, if you could give them a hand. Yeah, so our learning community operations and research workers, led by Mary Roberts, Mio Ikihele, Dr. Seni Taufa, Rasha Vangavau, and the rest of the team who all work together on this conference. I'm really proud of them. I'm really proud to be working with this wonderful group of just incredibly gifted, super humble group of work colleagues. They really just put me out to be the face of it, and I've been accepting credit, but on their behalf. They kept me out of the way. They said, you just go meet and greet Cinta, you know, just to make sure I don't ruin everything. And our tireless and fearless leader, Dr. and Associate Professor Tawila Percival. But if I was to name one name, please give a great big round of applause to Lois Chuling. Lois Chuling. A lot of you would have dealt with Lois Chuling because she has been our conference convener, and she has the patience of a saint. That program changed 1 million times to make it work for everybody. And I really forgot the main person. Please give a great big round of applause for the effervescent, energetic MC, Ma'a Brian Sangala. My gosh, puts us all to shame just with his linguistic skills. His theology skills last night, his singing skills was just amazing. But that is enough for me. Please travel safely because we will be in touch. Do your homework, alofatu. Thank you.
Can you just turn around to the person beside you, tap their back and say, what a survivor? And then can the person respond and say, you're amazing? Let's give a hand to Malai Tongia and the Pacific Connect team, please, as our hosts. I'm very conscious that she's in truth summarized the entire 2 days because she actually went through the platform of the report that has been launched, which guided us over these last 2 days. So I'm not going to summarize. What a surprise. I will now close those 2 pages and just leave the other 50 that I prepared. There's a Cook Island saying that goes, turi turi tamariki, oi re ora. Turi turi tamariki, oi re ora. The noise and clatter of children signifies a living community. And so I grew up in a time when every parent went, shh, be quiet. Smother the child kind of thing if they make a noise. And here we are saying, turi turi tamariki. If you didn't have the noise and the clatter of children, you would essentially have a dying community. So I want to thank the Tongans out there for keeping our communities alive and well. For those of you who were at the workshop that I was at, they have the highest birth rate in Aotearoa. And they're managing to keep Oamaru brown. I want to quote this, it's one of my favorite quotes, and there's nothing good in it, but it reminds me of where I am and who I am. In a river of accumulating economic, social, and health problems, the source is often found upstream. In a river of accumulating economic, social, and health problems, the source is often found upstream. Reese, 1991. It's the only quote I remember from school. So, what we have found over the 2 days is a feast of talanoa. Look at the Cook Islander using the term talanoa. I swore I'd never say it. A feast of talanoa. And that is really for people to have the ability to position themselves, the importance of the work they do, the contribution they make to the lives of children, to the lives of families. And over these last 2 days, this is what I heard. Selective hearing, I admit. You cannot talk about a child or children unless you talk about them in the context of their families and communities. A child does not stand by themselves. That is why housing is so important. That is why employment is so important. That is why money matters. That is why the health of the mother is equally as important as the health of the child. You cannot talk about a child, a Pacific child, a Cook Island child, a Samoan child, a Kiribati child, a Fijian child without talking about their family, without talking about their parents. I think that's the first message, subtle across the 2 days. Subtle because everyone talked about the child or children, but they also talked about the context of where those children live. I think that's the first insight I have. And I'm reminded of the Tokelau concept of tamamanu. That's right, that's a Cook Islander who said, talanoa, now I'm going to talk to you about Tokelau. Because, of course, you know, the northern part of the Cook Islands are all coral atolls. They look just like Tokelau. The only thing you have in the northern group of the Cook Islands that you have in common with Tokelau is fish and coconuts. The Tokelau talk about tamamanu. Tamamanu is a cultural concept likened to the notion of a chickling with a broken wing. And for a time in the life of that chickling, it will need care, protection, feeding, shelter. That's what the concept is about. That for a time, that chickling is going to need feeding, caring, shelter. Not forever, just for a time until it's able to take off and fly under its own wings. And so our interventions, which we have so clearly heard of, the planning, the costing, the diversity of the workforce, our interventions must be for but a short time in history. Those interventions must not be generational, which is what we have started to experience. Those interventions, like the tamamanu concept, must be but for the time until that chickling is able to fly in their own right. In 2023, we are living the histories of poor planning, of clear racism, and the inability to change. But we are hearing the stories of change today. That's the great thing, that this conference has actually said, no, this provider, this government agency, this organization is saying, we get it that our structures don't work, so we change. We get it that our systems are actually barriers, so we're going to adjust. We get it that our provision isn't delivering to the child, so we're going to have to clear away the rubbish that's in the way. Tamamanu, just for a time in history, not forever. We were not born to this world to be reliant on others forever. We only need the support and care and shelter for a time until we are able to do it for ourselves. The third point I would like to just share, it's just a bit like the benediction rather than a summary, except the benediction's going to go to Jesus and I don't know where mine is going to go to. We have heard the evidence that we don't need to wait for funding, so that's my thing. And as much as we appreciate that government has a responsibility to its citizens, and that as Pacificans, if I use the late Sitaleki Finau's term, Pacificans, he was such a Republican himself, but he used the term Pacificans. if we are going to actually find a pathway forward, it cannot be because we are relying on other people's money. And we have evidence in the last 2 days, the ability to initiate in our own right, to initiate, grow the fruit, and share the wisdom and insights. And what comes out of something like that, then we start to partner. So as a consequence of sitting here 2 days, you will appreciate that I had to give up, because we were going to do the walk around the arena, but I said, no, not today. I need to focus and listen because I'm doing the summary, the benediction. What we heard in the last 2 days was the power and the desire for people to be inspired and connect with each other. So as I sat here for 2 days, I'm going to walk away with 4 projects. Thank you. I don't know what I'm going to 4 projects. And here's the biblical quote, because Brian is so great at these, which is what Moana Connect has brought for us in these last 2 days. A people without a vision will, that's what we got today, vision. We are visionary people. We do not let our circumstances or our lack of money or our lack of shoes or a leaking roof stop us from having a vision and aspirations for ourselves and our families. And so the initiatives that have been born in the community can grow, one, because we are willing to buy in and support those initiatives without government funding. I'm not saying don't get government funding, but we don't have to rely on those government funding for our vision. We don't need to rely on government funding for our aspirations. The last 2 days have demonstrated that a determined people and a committed group of parents, a committed group of women, a committed group of young people can make the difference all by themselves for themselves. And today and yesterday we hear the good stories, and what happens? We want to invest in the good stories. Friends, invest in the good stories. Don't let the good stories die. That's just what Male Tongia was just talking about. Read and analyze the report and invest in its ability to have influence over others. Did I say that was my last point, Saini? Yeah, I think I got one more. It'll be a Cook Island 3. Coming back to children, I'm conscious that we'll be lucky if there are 3 Cook Islanders in the room, maybe 4, because they've all had to go back to work, just saying. I was sharing with someone, I said, do you know in our family custom, in Cook Island custom, I was with Tofi Lau yesterday, that the child is tapu, not the wise elderly, but the child is tapu. So we cannot, in my family, we cannot sleep on our child's bed or their mattress or their mat because the child is tapu. They can sleep in ours, but we can't sleep in theirs. So we had to rename my son's bedroom, who's never at home until Christmas, because none of his aunties would sleep in the spare room. I call his room the spare room. They wouldn't sleep. So when I go in there and made the bed up, they're sleeping on the carpet because the bed is tapu, because the child is tapu. So then we renamed it, we called it Saini's room. So it's now Saini's room. I've had to move out of my room from time to time. What's the thing here? We mustn't forget that our tapu relationships, and you might not conceive it the same as Cook Islanders, but we mustn't forget and lose track of our tapu relationships. Our tapu relationships have language. They have a language. There is a way that we connect and refer to each other. It's not oi, nor is it shh. We and each of us have special and unique tūranga, and all of them are tapu. We must remember to take our tapu language with us in our relationships. Secondly, as we leave this forum, Malai Tongia probably answered it for us. You see, we cannot afford to have been for 2 days at a talk fest. But we must in ourselves understand, given what we heard and see, so now I'm giving you a job. Given what you've heard and seen over the last 2 days, what will you change? What will you advocate for within 24 hours? I'm asking you to write that down on your note. Given what you've heard and seen over the last 2 days, what is the one action that you are going to contemplate to do in the next 24 hours? And I get that it's Saturday tomorrow, but you can prepare your email. What is your one action of change? What is the one new relationship you are going to pursue? What is the initiative that you are going to lend some support to? What's your one action of change that you will do in 24 hours? In 3 days, which will take us to Monday, who are you going to talk to tell about this idea? Who is the person, the persons, the organization, the colleague, the manager that you are going to share your insight, your learning from, that you want to invest in? In 3 days' time, who are you going to have a conversation with? No one is lifting their pen. No one is lifting their pen. What is the idea? What is the thinking? And who are you going to tell? In 1 week's time, now, of course, Palangi have 7 days in a week. We have 21, because we have a continuous week. Every day looks like Monday. In 1 week's time, what is the movement that you are going to commit yourself, the physical movement, to make that idea, the relationships, the person that you're communicating with, what is the action, the physical action you're going to take to make change happen? So 2 days of being here at this conference, we must surely be investing in action. In action for the child and children who live within our families, within our communities, who deserve the best at all times. There is no structure, there is no system, there is no delivery that needs to be considered, because they are all about, we are the structures. We might be all Pacific here, but we all uphold those same government structures. Structures, systems are about people. And we fall back on structures and systems because it's easier than having to do. Now I've challenged you within 24 hours, within 3 days, and within 1 week to articulate the insights you've gained from these last 2 days in an action. God bless you all. I trust that you keep safe. Pray for me. The last time I know it was the time before I came to Auckland. I never left for 3 days, just saying, stuck at the airport. So I'm hopeful that Wellington will be kinder and allow me to land. But keep safe, keep well, and bring all your coconuts to the next conference. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Jean Mataira. Okay, family, very shortly I'm going to ask Lizzie to come up on stage. We're going to take a photo. It's not to follow up in a month and see who's done what. No, it's just to, take a photo of all the people represented here. I wasn't going to do this, but you know what? I'm taking off my MC hat. I think just tying in everything here in a testimony. My mother has been living with us since November 2022. I haven't lived with my mother for about nearly 40 years. And up until 6 months ago, I didn't really care whether, we made contact again or whether, she died or not. My mother is the source of so much trauma in my life. And sadly, what I'm sharing resonates with about maybe 80% of this room. I can say anecdotally, but in some way, shape or form, this story is your story. My mum beat me. She beat me incessantly. Nearly every single day of my life, that's all I remember. I remember being called stupid so many times, I thought that was my first name. Useless. One of my favorite beatings was my mother took my hand. Remember the old rolling washing machines? I did something to upset her, so she decided to flatten my right hand by putting it through the roller. I laughed because that's the only way I knew how to deal with my trauma. You represent, when we talk about Pacific child well-being, I'm one of those of the big wave of the 60s and 70s. Our generation, we didn't have the services that we had back then. All I do is cry myself to sleep and pray that my mother would be run over by a truck. But God. My mum had a stroke 6 years ago, and when she moved over from Samoa, it was for medical health care. My testimony on the goodness of God, He's starting a healing journey in me, whereby my mother is incapacitated, but we're reconnecting on a level that I never thought possible. She shared things with me that I didn't even know about her traumatic upbringing in Samoa, which to me, of course it doesn't justify the way that she raised me as a child, but I understand now, seeing through the prism of time and having a sort of understanding. And again, I'm going through my own healing journey, as are many of you. But this highlights the importance of all of you and the work you're doing and bringing back to basics brilliantly the reason why you do what you do for the well-being of our children and for the well-being of you as your children, inner children, whose story like me, I know for a fact. How many times and wondering why? Why is mum and dad doing this to me when they tell me that they love me? Take that with you, let it inspire you. And again, I second what Jean said. I've been to so many conferences over the years, but it's what happens from here. It's the fruit that is produced from here that will really tell in time. I commend you all for the work that you do in serving our next generation. And my prayer is that, as with each generation, we don't have the stories that we have, So let's pray. We're going to take a photo. We've got Lizzie. So what we're going to do, after I pray, we're going to ask you all to stand and then just move into the middle parts here. And I want you to do your best school photo pose, okay? Your best school photo pose. So as you stand, hold somebody's hand, and we're going to pray out. Lizzie, come up on the stage. Big round of applause for Lizzie. Hold somebody's hand. Reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this world a better place if you can. Okay, are we all holding a hand of someone on the left and the right? Good. Father, you are a good, good God. And Father, I thank you for every person here standing before me. And Father, I pray that you would continue to infuse them with wisdom, with knowledge, with expertise, and ongoing passion in the well-being, the care, the protection, the nurturing, the engaging, and the building up of our next generation. I thank you, Father, that they work so tirelessly on the front line every single day serving our people, and for so many, without even a thanks. Father, as we go forth from this day, from here, I just pray that they would be renewed in their passion and in their why for what they do in serving our communities and serving our families. I declare a blessing over them, over their families, anointing, favor in Jesus' name. And everybody said, okay, so everybody moving into the middle. We're going to have a photo with Lizzie, okay? I want to acknowledge those that are still wearing their same attire as of the start from yesterday's Day 1 conference. Good on you. Good, good, good. Come on, everybody in the middle. Moving into the middle. So, Lizzie, you tell me which side needs to move in more. Come on, guys, moving in. On both sides, left and right. Oh, yeah, some can move up the front. Get out some of our matua, whoever. It doesn't matter. And just at the back, please, guys, move up. Come on, come on. And moving in all on the sides. So remember, we're going to take a few photos. The first one is your best ever school photo. The one that you wish, man, I wish I could have done that photo all over again. This is your opportunity to rectify your old school photo. So everybody looking at Lizzie, yes, moving in more, come on, come on. On the left, moving in more, moving in more. Okay, Lizzie, how are we looking? Okay, school photo pose. Come on, heads up, shoulders back. Looking at Lizzie on 3. Oh, wait. Okay, just on the right here. Okay, Lizzie. Here we go. Looking at Lizzie. Looking. Open your eyes. 1, 2, 3. Hop. Okay, and then, of course, as with every photo, we have the obligatory silly photo. So I want you for one more time to reconnect with your inner child. No, I don't want to be associated. No, I'm just... So this is your chance to do the silly photo. Doesn't matter with you, whatever. Okay, so one more time. Come on, connect with your inner child. 3, 2, 1, go, Lizzie. Yeah? God bless. Tō whāsoi for travel safe. Come on. Shake somebody's hand as you leave. Give somebody a hug. Tell them they're amazing and you're doing such an amazing job. And I will finish with acknowledging again my darling Ainga Caroline Maleko, Ascot Park for life. Let's go. Samsung photo here at the side. The black Samsung phone with the sticker, little Yoda, glasses and set of keys. Please.
Trapped inside. The reason why I tell you this is because it is you that gives me life and the reason to live. Oh, take me away when I see you again. I would like to be the one that loves you to the very end. Take me with you when your face is a frown. I would like to be the guy that cheers you up when you feel down. Take me right now, don't worry, I'll keep it cool. I just wanna be the one that fights an army just for you. I'll hold you tight so we'll never be apart. This thing that I am saying right now, I mean it from my heart. La, 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 la. La, 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 la. La, 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 la. La, 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 la. Mati mati tahu ai tatara, au